Data shows the number of diagnosed ADHD cases is rising in children and teens, and that has many doctors and health experts concerned. Welcome back to 10 News at 5. I'm Beth Haynes. New data from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention shows that 11% of school-aged children have been diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD. The study found that an estimated 6.4 million children ages 4 through 17 have received an ADHD diagnosis at some point in their lives. That's a 16% increase since 2007 and a 53% jump over the past decade. About 2/3 of those children are on prescriptions such as Ritalin or Adderall, and that has some doctors and experts concerned that the diagnosis and medication are being overused. ADHD has historically been estimated to affect 3 to 5% of children. The number of boys diagnosed with the disorder is higher than girls. About 10% of high school boys are currently on medication for ADHD. Well, for more on ADHD and this study, we're joined now by Dr. John Kupfner. He's a child psychologist with Peninsula Outpatient Centers in Knoxville. Really appreciate you being with us. Certainly an interesting study, and a number of cases have been on the rise. We were just talking for a decade now, seen a lot of change. Yeah. Let's begin, though, by talking about how ADHD is typically defined.
Well, ADHD, there are a couple different types or subtypes of ADHD. You've got a hyperactive type, and then you've got an inattentive type. So primarily the one's going to be picked up earliest is a hyperactive type of ADHD. These are kids that are extremely hyperactive. They not only fidget, they can't sit still. They're impulsive. They put their hands on other children. They can't stand in line in school. They're blurting out answers and just generally a disruption to everyone in the classroom. So that gets picked up a little earlier. Then there's also what we call an inattentive type. This is a type that's a pure focus, concentration, and memory problem. These are people that are, especially kids, that get very distracted. They're very forgetful. They can't complete multi-step commands. If you were to tell a child with this condition, pick the towel off the bathroom floor, take out the mail, and then, pick up your shoes from the bottom of the stairs, they might get one out of those three things done before they get distracted and go off, and you have to keep reprompting, re-reminding them. It's not because the kid was being defiant. They just generally are sorry and apologetic, and just over many aspects and areas of their life, they're not able to sort of complete more than one thing without constant attention and direction. And then the last group of kids, which is sort of more severe, was what we call the combined type, which would be a mixture of the two.
We mentioned the Ritalin, Adderall. What are the most common types of treatment? And I guess it varies depending on which group you fall in.
Well, the first thing you got to figure out is if the ADHD needs to be treated. What I tell parents in the clinic a lot of times is ADHD in and of itself doesn't mean that you can't concentrate or focus. It means it's harder for you. Now, the degree of how much harder for you it is than, say, the kid next to you, therein lies the question. So when it gets to the point where it's what we as psychiatrists call interfering with your social and occupational functioning, when it gets so bad that you're really struggling in school and you're not reaching anywhere near what your potential would be, no matter how many prompts and helps and aids that the school and parents are providing, then it might be time to talk about medication. Now, so treatments for ADHD do include some behavioral interventions, which would be keeping lists, checking things off lists, visual aids, prompts, reminders, so the child can become more organized and learn to live a more organized life. Adults like this. There are people that if they don't spend an extra few seconds when they park in the parking lot, finding some sort of landmark to know where their car is, when they walk out of the mall, it's like a blank slate. The car could be anywhere. Society's evolved a little bit to help, and we have the alarms that chirp and help you find things, but you have to really develop a process of staying very organized and spend extra energy focusing on it than, say, somebody next to you. That's because ADHD affects what we call working memory and processing speed. So working memory is the stuff from a minute ago, not from yesterday. I can remember what I read yesterday, but what I read 3 minutes ago just gets lost. So,
are we really seeing the number of cases in children and adults on the rise, or is the diagnosis just better?
Okay, well, we're certainly seeing them more diagnosed. The diagnosis is not better. We've been using the same tools for a very long time. But you are seeing more kids present to the clinic with these complaints. So I guess that's wherein lies the question. And we look at the early 2000s as when there was a real explosion. Personally, I look towards the school and our educational system as well. Since then, we've really moved towards a lot of standardized examinations which require you to complete a certain number of of questionnaires and a certain amount of prescribed time, if you're having problems with focus memory and that working memory I talked about, you're going to really struggle and your grades are going to drop. It might not be that you're not smart or have been told that you were not smart, it's just that you're not performing. So those kids got sort of pressured into looking at it if there's a bigger problem.
Do you think it's overdiagnosed and over-medicated?
I think in medicine, conditions that are easily treated and respond quickly to medications which are relatively safe are often overdiagnosed and overtreated. ADHD would be one of those.
Yeah.
I don't think it's to an alarming rate that we need to worry about that so much. I think that the clinicians are pretty competent.
Well, unfortunately, we're out of time. So much more we could discuss on this topic. We'll have to have you back, but we appreciate you being with us today.
Well, thank you.
All right, and